I'm not interested in the spectacle, and I'm always thinking about sort of the minutia or the ways of using something like color that doesn't have to be huge and overly expressive or really kind of flashy in a sense. I'm not one to easily kind of put myself in a category. I don't want to feel constrained by having a certain medium that I have to sort of sit in that camp in a sense. I love the relationship to painting, so there is a relationship to painting that I don't want to lose. In terms of the reason that I maybe consider myself more of a sculptor some days is because I'm never content with just painting on the surface. I think that the one thing that's important is allowing the materials to have the freedom to do what they do, as well as to have a sense of control of the creative expression that I want to develop in a particular piece. And often the materials bounce from one to another or come together in a way that may not seem as traditional. The wood serves the purpose of having a surface that the paint can be applied to, but also light and color have a particular way of reacting to not only the surface itself, but where the context of that piece exists, whether it be more sculptural on a surface or on a wall, for example. As you can see, I use a lot of canvas and wood, and I cut through, so there's a lot of cutting and a lot of manipulating and a lot of kind of trial and error in terms of how things function. I actually started out as a photographer and someone who always drew. I love drawing, and for me, the process is obviously a big part of what I'm drawn to exploring materiality and materials. I love seeing what the possibilities are with any kind of a material, of course, as most creative people are, but canvas and wood gives me some sense of control, and there's also a loss of control in the limitations of, how those two materials meet. So I'm very interested in the edges. There's this beautiful thing that happens in the transition. I use different gessos depending on how rigid I want them to be. And then, of course, this is the kind of stuff that I love that, happens innately just by allowing the hand, so the freedom to move as well. If I wanted them perfect, I would use a ruler, right? So, that's the whole beauty. And sometimes I actually have a lot of little mini scissors I use to get more roundedness, allowing that non-structured line to develop. The way that I think about the grids, for example, or these shapes that follow a quote-unquote grid beginning, they are a lot about drawing in line, but then they become so much about form and substance because there's just that a little bit of distance through, and to have color become form as you're seeing it through that space. And that's a big part of the work as well. How we experience color as something. It's less about the surface in that way, and then it really becomes about form. I use a lot of reflective color. In this case, there's a subtle blue that enhances that shadow, and it really activates the wall. So I'm really interested in your relationship then to the color that exists not only from the piece itself, but from the light in the space, the architecture, the surface itself. It's also dependent on the viewer having enough time to experience something like it's not a hit you over the head color that comes through behind. It's a subtle shift in light. It could in some ways get very repetitive and monotonous to work with kind of the parameter of one structure, but because I allow it to do so many things, or I warp it or bend it, or find these exciting ways to kind of express what's most integral to me about them, or most interesting about that form. It's a beautiful metaphor for a lot of things, the grid, right? And so when you deconstruct it and you start to play with it in new ways, it's a means to getting you to do those things with the material, with the color, and with shape and line. I use canvas like I was using paper. I started a lot of these iterations of the grids, these sort of awkward grids that I call them, with paper, cutting through the surface with a very common structure of the grid, but not thinking of the grid as something that is very rigid or something that only speaks about organization, but something that really reflects an ideal of perfection. When I do the works on paper, they become so much about the working out color and relationships of light and color, and less about the materiality of what happens with canvas when it is either cut or it's bent or it's formed and it has this life of its own. I think I'm always working in multiple directions. I think that that's so important for me, the diversity of forms, the way that the grid itself has become, it's taken on multiple iterations. And there's a warping, and a warping is not in a negative way, but a warping in a way that really is allowing it to shift into something that's meaningful, that shows an expression of movement, of awkwardness, or of kind of a breaking out of that rigidity of the tradition of the grid or geometry. The fluidity of perception. I'll template one, I'll shift it a little, I'll kind of move it where I want it to go, or and then sometimes I go back in and I trim it even thinner. So some of them get very, very precariously thin. I teach college level, and then I'm also at RISD to teach pre-college, so that's exciting. It's art class. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. It's always rewarding. I am from northern New Jersey, and it's a very wooded area. It's really beautiful. So it was a really idyllic kind of nature landscape in a lot of ways. I think that definitely impacts your ways of thinking about light and color, and the appreciation of nature is a big part of it. Yeah, it's like how much of the day also do we pay attention to the shifting of light? It's just such an amazing thing when you get to actually sit out for the afternoon and watch like dusk happen. And to have a minute, I mean, I think that's what art affords everybody, is that time to sort of step out of the predictable kind of ways of seeing things around us. You notice the landscape in a different way after you've looked at something that has more ambiguity or something that isn't predictable. Yeah, I think one of the things people mistake my work for, and they'll say, oh, your work is really quiet. I'm like, not quiet. There's a lot going on, so in no way does it feel quiet to me. I think my work exists in the world because it has to exist. It's like one of those things where it's like you're spinning something out of nothing. It's making the intangible tangible. I don't want to hit anyone over the head with a particular agenda, right? It's not propaganda for, this specific type of minimal abstraction. It's an offering of like a colorful, substantial, meaningful experience, like the experience of the time of day. It's like that beautiful moment of reverie or reflection.